everyone, and welcome to the Eye On Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Joel, and coming across from all the way the other continent, my buddy Matthew. Matthew, how you doing?
I'm still on the same continent. I didn't go to Europe, sadly,
That's true.
but I'm doing okay. Life is being life. But otherwise, Star Wars is Star Wars. Still here, doing things to enjoy, things to chat about. Whole great comic saga to chat about.
Yes, Star Wars beeth the Star Wars.
Darn
If. I don't know why I decided to go full on Shakespeare.
Why not?
Yep. Oh, yeah. With Hidden Empire number 5 on the shelf, the Crimson Dawn Saga has officially been in the books. We look back at the wildly ambitious crossover event, and to help us out, we are joined by my good friend, your good friend, Mr. Doc Holocron. Let's see.
Oh.
You may appear, Mr. Holocron, if you are with us. Let's see. Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, there he is.
Yes.
And here I am.
Yes.
What's happening there?
It's Gideon.
The
And he's
Gideon's in town.
There you go.
Maf
There we go.
Gideon, yes, he is. He is in town. He is very much in town.
very much so.
As always, welcome, Doc. Welcome to our show. As always, you can follow us at the Eye On Canon Pod on Twitter. You can also follow us on our Discord page, the Star Wars Underworld Discord, where this Friday we will be hosting a Fall Guys game night. So, woohoo! And obviously, if you're a YouTube member or send us a super chat, we will read your comments. But even if you don't send us a super chat, we will read your comments anyway because we're nice that way.
Give us money. Give the channel money. It's all good. One thing I want to say: Tractor Beam got bumped again. Comics reviews, Comics Wednesday. Try and get to them Friday. I'm gonna have to think about what I do with that, just because different workload and different things getting in the way. But check out all my previous comic reviews. But we're talking all about comics today, so it should be okay.
Also, before we get started, I'd just like to point out my new shades.
Nice.
Ooh,
yeah,
very nice.
And, this awesome new shirt.
Yeah.
That I just got ordered. Very nice. Very
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Fucking gay rights, everybody.
Exactly. I love how your shades, by the way, make a rainbow shape. I don't know if that's like intentional or not.
It wasn't, but I guess that's also fitting.
Yeah, it works.
I guess it's just the lighting of whatever of your computer.
Yeah.
But speaking of all that good stuff, speaking of Mr. Maf Gideon, we see Maf Gideon return in the latest episode of The Mandalorian, The Spies.
Okay.
I love that toy. By the way. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's a Kenner style figure.
Oh, nice.
And I must say, if last Book of Boba Fett was Toothpick Watch, this time Mustache Wash. We miss the stash of Moff Gideon because he's clean shaven.
I didn't even notice.
It's Pelion. He absorbs all the mustaches.
There it is.
Exactly. He's only one. There can only be one great mustache in the Empire, and one really raggedy beard with hooks. Me and Doc have done a review on his channel, The Beskar Broadcast.
Which will be
you want to check that out?
Yeah, which will be posted tomorrow night. Tonight, I posted our Guns for Hire review, which is much shorter, has much less for us to talk about, but yeah.
Yes.
I expect our review of that tomorrow night.
Yes, thank you. But we will still give at least a small brief of what we thought. I'll just say I really like this episode overall. I love kind of getting a sense of scale with kind of Gideon and like where he kind of stands. It's like how much of he's a threat. I'm not gonna say that, but like he's definitely not the big bad of the galaxy. He is just a warlord on Mandalore, kind of doing his own thing, but also part of the grander design that is to come with Mr. Big Blue coming. Really interesting thing, Return to Mandalore. And, I'll just say by the end of next week, we'll know if the armor is going to be the big bad of the season or we're playing it straight. So who knows? Who knows? As like I've said, like maybe the finale will be like, we did it. We restored Mandalore. Yay. And now we take on the New Republic. Yay. And then it's like,
wait.
Oh, shoot.
What?
Yeah,
yeah,
but Doc, I'll just toss it to you, like your brief thoughts. So obviously, you want to get the whole thing, just kind of condense it into summary?
My summary is it's one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars I've ever seen. Which I know sounds like high praise, but like this was excellent. Very, very well done. Love the character growth. Love the developments with the Mandalorians. Love the conflict between the tribes. Love the teases of the future, setting up all the big things coming, not just in the Mandiverse, but also in the sequels and everything beyond that. Just little connections here and there. And really feels like we're bringing everything to a head. Hopefully, the Mandalorians will still have a way to follow by the end of this season.
Right.
And Matthew, we'll toss it to you. Your thoughts on this week's?
Because I haven't had a chance to talk about this one yet. Yeah, I think they must have timed it with Celebration a little bit. I mean, just having the Thrawn name drop, the Pelion appearance, Brendel Huck's appearance, timing that with, of course, Ahsoka and all the announcements around that show from Celebration. Yeah, it really, and it felt tied in. Felt, like you said, the big scale in terms of the Imperial, the Shadow Council, or I forget what it's called. That's what it's called.
Yep.
With Brendel Hux and with Pelion, and talking about Thrawn coming in. Where's Ray Sloan? All those questions coming up. How much does that tie into the Aftermath trilogy? We don't know still, but definitely sitting, like you said, situating this in the larger context. I gotta talk about the armor here. I sometimes take kind of extreme takes on things. I will be deeply disappointed if she is the big bad, if she's a spy. Maybe she's not a fan of the Republic, but I just want a happier, simpler, more aspirational story right now. I don't know why that is. Maybe because I'm watching Star Trek, and Star Trek Picard is not as happy or aspirational, and Star Trek maybe should be. I'm loving Picard, but that was last week's episode, or a few weeks ago.
Matthew, we're losing you. We're losing you.
Oh no, I'm here.
Okay, there you go. You're good.
No, but I wonder. I can't help but wonder, and I keep on bringing this up all the time. If people just don't, am I good? We're here.
I know you keep maybe I keep muting. I'm muting. I'm not going to mute this time.
Okay. I keep bringing this up all the time, but I can't help but wonder if people are just have difficulty trusting the armor because she's such a clear believer in her convictions, in her way. And again, the fact that maybe, yes, she makes this really rapid adjustment, but Bo-Katan, what if Bo-Katan to her represents hope? What if her seeing the Mythosaur, the return of the heir to the throne, the possibility of factions coming together to retake Mandalore, what if all that, at the very least, I'm not saying she's going to just give up her convictions. What if she says that this is the best bet for my people is to play ball and play nice and not spy on the Empire or spy on them for the Empire, I just don't see it. I don't know. People say things about the score, say things about, we've been speculating on this for a while. Well, and people, the tension with Din about how she kicks him out and brings him back in only because he got himself rebaptized. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. Maybe because I sang karaoke with Emily Swallow. I don't know, but yeah, I'll be disappointed. I think it's actually a cheap story if she goes bad, because we've seen that way too much now.
I will say with the armorer, I could see them doing a thing where like it turns out like I intentionally led us into this ambush because I wanted to like test us, or like I wanted to test our resolve or something. But if they lose, like, and I have a feeling this might end that way if we get like a full on, like if we go full Bad Batch season 2 finale and like the Mandos lose, like this is a full loss for them, and like then the armor realized like what have I done, and like she has to like atone for that next season. Like I think
that would be more interesting. I'd say that'd be more interesting a little bit. Yeah. And we could redeem the whole she's a spy thing a little bit, but
yeah, and we could see like her having to atone for like her strict like orthodoxy like in the past, like and, like with her growing relationship with Bo, which I know some people have been shipping those two.
Really, that's interesting.
more power to them. They look around the same age range. I think the actresses are. So, yeah. So, I could do some interesting things with them. And like, as the armor has her own faith tested, Bo has her own faith tested in her ways. So like, they could kind of like balance each other out and like affect each other's ways so that they go better ways aside from the ways they were going before and go like new ways, I guess.
Anyways, yeah. I mean, I just want to say to that point, Joel. I mean, again, yeah, it's a matter. I don't think it's going to be all or nothing like that, though. I think it's going to be room for compromise. I mean, again, maybe I'm projecting my own perspectives into this too, but people don't just necessarily give up wholesale. Don't sell the farm wholesale. Some people do. Some people just completely say, "Oh, I was completely wrong. I'm gonna have this massive conversion," and that happens in Star Wars all the time too. I think, if anything, she's going to hopefully find a way. Again, I want a more positive story here. Yarmer finding a way to maintain her convictions in this new situation, because those convictions came from the situation on Concordia and Concord Dawn, and then of course Night of a Thousand Tears and the Purge and the Exile. So reasons for her to hold on, reasons for her to let go. One thing to say, it's a very compelling story as it is. I think it would be just less compelling if she was a spy, but yeah, some things to atone for. I'll give you that.
It'll be interesting because again, we are getting a season 4. We've known this for a while.
Yeah.
So obviously, story's not really complete.
Maybe season 5.
Hey, maybe even season 5 for all we know.
Yeah.
But
apparently, from what I've heard, apparently they want to keep the Mandoverse going until 2027, which is the 50th anniversary of Star Wars.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be surprising. But it's sort of like, and also, Dave Filoni likes The Hobbit, and it's sort of like, well, after the dwarves took back the mountain, it didn't go after they took it from Smaug. It's like things got there were still some troubles ahead. So it's sort of like, yay, Mando's back, and now what are the repercussions of that from the Imperial and even New Republic perspective? Like, oh shoot, we got Mandos, a unified Mandalore. It's not necessarily a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing, but it's sort of like, that's people are gonna have their eye on that. It's like, oh, all the Mandos are on Mandalore.
Yeah.
That's gonna be interesting. That's
yeah.
No, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious, like what kind of note the finale leaves us on in terms of like, is it gonna be dun dun dun, we did it, yay, or it's like, but something still not smells good, or it's now people are gonna take notice and now the real trouble starts.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, well, obviously the Empire is not going to be happy. The Imperial Remnant, whatever it is. But it'll be interesting to see what the New Republic and the voices within the New Republic think of that. I'm sure there's going to be this interesting foreign policy debate, right? Is a unified Mandalore good for the Republic or bad as a potential ally against the Imperial Remnant, or is this a threat?
And also that whole Project Necromancer thing, which I have a feeling might have to do with a certain Palpatine somehow returning, maybe.
Sure, and the fact that there's something, the Project Necromancer involved on Mandalore. I mean, we saw the Snokes in a jar there in Gideon's whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, not necessarily Snokes in a jar, but you know what I mean.
They might be Gideons in jars.
Might be Gideons in jars, Grogu's in jars, who knows? But so clearly the Empire and the Imperial Remnant not going to be happy. But yeah, again, I'd be really curious to hear. Maybe it's Mon Mothma in the Senate and debating what does this mean about reformed Mandalore. Just like
we'll tie to Andor as well.
Yeah, but tying Andor in back in the timeline. But in this era, what I was thinking is just the way Satine being non-aligned, there was some tension there with the Republic. These could be our allies. What do you mean? They're this whole third front opening up here of people of planets just aren't going to actually support the war effort. Well, these horrible separatists, what are they doing? But obviously, we know the war. Probably that non-aligned group was probably morally more correct at the end of the day. Here's Satine's sister leading the way in this non-aligned group. Again, what does Carson Teva think? What does Mon Mothma think? about all this, especially given how we know the rise of the First Order is just around the corner, and we saw that in this episode too.
And also, we know that the New Republic has the Beskar alloy that was around Gideon's escape. So they're already suspicious of the Mandalorians. Like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, so.
I mean, we don't know where they are in the sequel trilogy.
That's true. Like, where are they? Where are these Mantos? But yeah, there's a lot to take in, and it's going to be very, very exciting.
I have a feeling this guy might have a reason for that.
So, yes.
Yep.
Oh yeah. He's fantastic. Such a fantastic character for sure.
I hope he doesn't live. I hope he lives.
Hopefully he gets one more season at least. Like,
I think one more.
It's Giancarlo. Like, you got to use him to his full extent.
So great. Yeah.
Exactly. One more thing on my end before we do move it to Matthew to take some news. Well, here's a little news on my end, which will affect Star Wars, but also will also just. I mean, it's going to be a good thing inherently.
Yeah, I don't know if it's sad news or not. I just it's short term.
Really sad news.
Then we go.
Not really sad news, but they're like the Writers Guild of America had officially voted yes to strike. The strike will begin in May. They're gonna. I agree. Solidarity to our writers friends out there. If they want better pay, the residual checks, and a better career path, because being a writer in Hollywood's hard unless your name's Jon Favreau.
That's true.
But obviously, in terms of Star Wars, that means all scripts will come to a halt. Obviously, writers. I hope the writers' strike doesn't last long, but I also hope the writers get their due. We will be keeping an eye on this for sure. At least I will. And I thought I would just bring that up because it seems important, because it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my little bit of non-Star Warsy, but it will affect Star Wars more.
Yeah, it's true. It might delay some things coming down the pipe, but also, I mean, we've seen that before. The global pandemic delayed something coming down the pipe. Remember like the last writer's strike, Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog came out of that one. So if you remember that, by Joss Whedon and company, that was fun. So yeah, and yeah, I mean the more serious point, labor standards, people are, being more respected in all the work they do, and the important essential work they do. And my excuse to show you all what the correct spelling of labor is. Okay. Yeah.
There says unionize.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go. I have a similar toy over there.
Also, I want to point out this Jar Jar figure is extremely sticky, and I don't know if I like that or not.
I don't like it for you. There we go.
I mean, on one hand, it's accurate, but also, I don't know if I should be holding this.
Yeah.
Got wet ones out there. Just wipe your hands. Hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer.
All right. One more thing. News thing for now from Celebration. Guys, it's happening. I got so excited. I only heard all I get at the High Republic panel, which I did end up seeing on the. Eventually was able to see it on YouTube. Kevin Scott talking about his short story in the anthology Tales of Light and Life. His story is called Light in the Darkness. Announced that it's set just before Phase 3 and stars, get this, Master Keeve Trennis. It's happening, guys. He also showed in the newsletter, his newsletter that was released a few days later, some art of her by Ibrahim Robertson. If you can see that, likely for the Phase 3 comic that Kevin Scott is again writing. Master Keeve Trennis, which to me means we're gonna explore the story that he set up in Dooku Jedi Lost, saying, "Oh yeah, she's the 19th, and Keeve Master Trennis,
the Lost 20."
The Lost 19th. Of course, Dooku is the Lost 20th, but why? What happens? Why does she leave? I mean, I have my theories about why she leaves. It's different from Dooku, very different. She leaves out of her moral convictions. I'm pretty convinced, but just to know that he's. I mean, I'm so happy for Kevin Scott. So happy for our girl Keeve. I mean, it is a little surprising. She can't be more than how old would she be at this point? Like maybe 25 or something. And she says she gets a field promotion to a master. But And maybe that's part of why she falls, or not falls. I don't think she falls to the dark side at all. Why she leaves, maybe because she has this youthful sense of, and the way youth can actually give people a clearer sense of right and wrong, and not be so caught in the patterns and institutional patterns and habits of leadership that keep people stuck. As I just said, the armor maybe doesn't have this conversion full speed, but we know Kiev does. Kiev does something, and for a master to leave is always a big deal. And you get a bust in this room here. She might be down there. That might be her right there. I don't know. But yeah, I'm just again excited because this is the story. One of the stories I've wanted to see and hear because of what it says about the Jedi, what it says about what the Jedi in this year and where they're headed, and where the Jedi are at in by the time of Dooku Jedi Lost, and of course the Phantom Menace. I don't know, Doc, have you been following High Republic? You following everything to do with Keith Trennis?
I haven't finished phase 1 yet, but
okay, fair enough.
I'm worried about spoilers because I know I'm never gonna get caught up until at least a year from now. So
that's fair. Did you listen to or read Dooku Jedi Lost?
Of course I did. Of course.
Yeah. So I mean, does this news resonate?
I'm interested in Keith's story. I want to see where this goes, how this plays into the larger thing, especially with Acolyte coming out. I want to know if this connects to that at all. I think it's a cool story to set up, and I'm interested to see how they handle Keith's ultimate decision to leave the Jedi.
Yeah. Joel, you've heard me go on about Keith for a while. I don't know. What do you think of this?
Yeah, it's good. I think a story just about her as the main focus, I think, is very I think is what's going to be needed moving forward. And it's kind of that was one of the big things. Like, oh, she's one of the lost at the time, lost 19, lost 20 when Dooku does it. So it's like, okay, well, that's got to be a story you focus on. Just how wide is she one of the lost 20? And here you go. That will be that story.
And then to get it in phase 3, I thought we might get it afterwards just because she's still so young, but phase 3, here we go. I mean, Trials of the Jedi. Speaking of all that, speaking of Celebration, next week we're gonna actually dive into everything, all the paper canon announcements at Star Wars Celebration Europe. Gonna get another guest on hopefully for that too. So
I can't wait to talk about that Ochi novel. That was my
Ochi novel. Oh yeah, I mean Ochi showed. I guess I don't forget to mention Ochi in the notes here, but anyway, yeah, Ochi. I mean, an Ochi novel, that'd be sweet. That'd be cool. I don't know. Fair enough. All right.
I want it to be nothing but 400 pages of him getting beaten up by various people.
That'll be an art. That'll be a one of those auteur novellas or whatever.
Yes.
Literary fiction, literature. There we go. All right. So anyway, the reason we're all here, as we said off the top, the how did I write it here? The Hidden Empire number 5. It's on the shelves. So Crimson Dawn Saga. It's in the books. It's finished. Obviously, Crimson Dawn and everything going on with that. There's still the aftermath to that, but we thought we'd look back and just go through the whole plot, the whole story, kind of with a wide brush. Of course, as I say here, we starts with War of the Bounty Hunters, and especially War of the Bounty Hunters Alpha. Of course, Boba Fett on the cover there. Kind of a bit of a nod to Bad Batch with Omega and Alpha and Omega, but not really in this case. The biggest thing about what happens, of course, in Alpha, I believe it's in the Alpha, the original Qi'ra reveal. And we'll start off right off the bat. Doc, what did you think of that reveal when you saw it? That Qi'ra's back in a comic, and the organizing premise of the auction for Han and Carbonite, and also then, of course, the return of Crimson Dawn. All these, you're hit with all these 3 things at once. Doc, what did you think of all that right off the bat?
Yeah, War of the Bounty Hunters was really fun. It was a really fun, solid crossover event. A lot of cool connections, a lot of cool various meetups between the different characters of different series. Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn being back, very, very cool development. I love that they're taking that storyline and continue to expand upon it. if we get to see more of it on screen, awesome. They do leave the door open in the very end, but we'll get to that. And yeah, it was just a really cool story. It was a really cool way to tie up this loose end that like got established in one movie that never went anywhere. And then got hinted at again in the final season of Clone Wars, and then got its full-fledged own storyline in the comics, which I know a lot of people are still saying like, like Crimson Dawn should be in more than just a comic and stuff. And like, yeah, I want to see that. I would be down for that. But also, like, this is still a really good story in itself. And I thought Charles-Soule did a really good job of taking that lingering thread and tying it into the original trilogy and making it really organic and really natural. And I also think it's cool that he managed to make Crimson Dawn important to the events in the original trilogy without it feeling too like shoehorned. Like he didn't make it feel like it wasn't like in Legends when they decided like, oh, that mod that they escaped from over the Kessel Run. Yeah, that was created by the Mortis gods. Did you know that?
Wait, what?
Later Legends got very weird.
Yeah, it's stuff like that I'm not a fan of, but Charles-Soule managed to work Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn into the story in a way that I thought really worked, and we'll get into this in Empire, but yeah, the fact that Qi'ra's selfish desire to kill Palpatine and on behalf of Maul's whole like long-lasting revenge, like the fact that that's ended up inadvertently helping the Rebel Alliance in the end to defeat the Empire, I think is really cool. And it's a cool way to like subtly bring in like previous storylines from the prequel era into the original trilogy and make it feel like a thing that just feels like it should be there.
Charles-Soule always just causes fuss. That's his thing. And by that I mean he just has a way of bringing even just having these creative ideas, these big creative swings that bring more attention to the comics. And he did that with Vader. He's done that with multiple times in this crossover event. Of course, he's doing it with in the ongoing storyline that both does and sometimes doesn't have much to do with Qi'ra here. But yeah, I mean, just I remember all the talk. I remember all the talk was about Zizor for a second. Remember that? Of course, that was a wonderful red herring. But yeah, the bringing Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn and just using this auction as this organizing event, kind of like they do with High Republic, right? They use, say, the dedication of Starlight Beacon or the destruction of Starlight Beacon, or sorry, spoiler, or the Battle of Jeddah or whatever, as this way of centering the action, and then all the characters coming around. Joel, I'll ask you, again, how did you react to the Qi'ra reveal and Crimson Dawn? And I mean, I know you were probably a little disappointed because you wanted, Solo and all that to happen, but at first, going back when you first heard about it.
Yeah, I get that. We all had the big question, which got answered by the end, about Qi'ra. But yeah, I was certainly interesting for sure. It's like, oh, okay, this is kind of this is interesting. It's like there's Qi'ra, and kind of this reimagining almost of the Shadows of the Empire storyline a little bit with like a big underworld kerfuffle.
That's why Zizor gets name dropped there. There we go.
That's true. Yeah. He might actually have appeared in like one scene. But it was sort of like, oh, here's kind of like a big kind of tie into like Solo's character and like all that stuff that went down. And it was like really, it was cool. I was like, oh, okay, that's definitely something I gotta check out now, because I think this is very important. But it's definitely a swing for sure. It's like definitely put some eyes on it.
There we go. Put our eyes on it for sure.
here's the major movie character whose kind of movie career kind of got undercut. So like what's happened to them? It's like, oh, here they are now. So that I find that kind of cool and interesting for sure.
By movie career, I mean the character's movie career.
Yes. Career. She's fine.
Yeah. She's
in
Clark. Clark is fine. She's doing good.
Qi'ra's a character,
yeah. Qi'ra's a character, yeah. Thanks. But yeah, and it's sort of like just seeing her now. It's like kind of gonna be involved in like this kind of massive in between thing between episode 5 and 6. That was really cool. So yeah, that was certainly quite a surprise, and we all had to question what was going to happen, and we got that answer, and we'll get to that answer when we get there.
It's interesting. It does two things. First of all, there's always this challenge in this time writing in this time period where you can't write Han Solo. I mean, Mark Guggenheim, what he was able to do, or is it Mark Guggenheim? Yeah, with just going back in the timeline and writing an earlier story that will connect with Ajax Sigma. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, taking this character from Han's past, bringing her forward, and what it also does then is it raises this intriguing question. Okay, Charles, what are you up to here? What's going on? Where are you going to go with this character? You've done such a great job paying off. Like I keep saying, he has been the master of setup and payoff in all of Star Wars, more than all up there with say Filoni and them. But yeah, where does this go? And it really drew our readers in just what we want for a first issue. So we'll get into War of the Bounty Hunters as crossover. It's the first major crossover in Star Wars canon comics. Yeah, there was a Vader down and the weird zombie thing. I forget what it was called. But yeah, this was the big event, the big Marvel style summer event, if you will. And yeah, so War of the Bounty Hunters, you got a Boba Fett story to get Frozen Han back to Jabba. That's the flagship. You have the Edgehawk crew in Valance, kind of sorting out where their allegiance. Well, Valance sorting out where his allegiances are, and the Edgehawk crew taking on jobs. Ultimately, of course, getting kind of sucked into Crimson Dawn. That's in Bounty Hunters. Afra, this wild story of her encountering the Ascendant on the Vermilion. That weird horns thing, the mind control thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say Mind Flare, but it's not that. That's another.
No, I forget what it's called. I could have looked up, but I forget what it's called.
The old Sith thing, the Ascendant,
the
Spark Eternal.
No, that's later on, but the earlier Ascendant technology where you can control people's minds. Even ended up tying in Sly Moore and her machinations against Vader in the Vader comic. And of course, Han being involved, I mean, Leia was going to go. And so is then Luke and Chewie in also Charles-Soule's ongoing comic. So, Doc, I'll throw this back to you. You've touched on it a little bit, that, given the details of all these stories coming together, how do you think it all held together? And of these stories, which one stood out to you the most?
Of the crossovers, I want to say it's easy to say Hidden Empire is my favorite because it's like the climax.
So, I mean, specifically in War of the Bounty Hunters.
Okay. In terms of which issue stood out to me the most,
or like which comic run, which plot line.
Oh yeah, in terms of the intersecting comics, honestly, I would say probably the Vader ones, because not just because I'm a sucker for Greg Pak's Vader run. I think it's one of the best Star Wars comic runs, period. But yeah, I think it just really did a good job of showing where Luke and Vader are mentally at this point, because Luke is still afraid to fight Vader, so he doesn't fight him, but he does lure him away from Han by making him fly after him in his TIE fighter, and it's a really cool air battle, and Vader is taunting Luke the whole time. He has fully decided post the Exegol story that he's going to now try and destroy Luke on behalf of the Emperor, because he doesn't think he can turn him. And he does fail ultimately. And by the end of War of the Bounty Hunters, Vader decides that if he can't stop Luke, then he's just going to refocus himself on doing whatever Palpatine says, because he knows he can't fight him at this point, because he knows about the Final Order and everything. So he's just going to dedicate himself to hunting down Crimson Dawn now, because that's all he has left to do at this point. Because all he can do now is do errands on behalf of Palpatine, because what else is he going to do?
Right. Yeah, it's a great point, especially the way it served to tie Vader into this by devoting himself, like you said, devoting himself to taking on Crimson Dawn. Joel, if you're able to follow all the storylines, sorry, which how do you feel it all held together? And sorry about this, these which storyline stood out to you the most?
I think it held together more or less okay. Do you feel like you could kind of maybe see like where the story kind of had to wait for the main line to kind of get going before like they could continue on? You know, that kind of is one of the thing of this whole thing is like there's a lot going on in a year's time. Between episodes.
Matthew, that device you were talking about was called a thought dowser.
Yes, thought dowser. Thank you.
But yeah, there's a lot going on in between episode 5 and 6. Like, dang, it's like you gotta ask yourself now. Like when the Emperor's coming to the Death Star, it's like, Lord Vader, it has been quite a year. I'm just tired at this point. Like, where's the Qi'ra? And then
can we just have a drink?
You're white. Yeah, I need a drink. Hope this Death Star thing works out.
Yeah.
But but not like with Doc, I think the Vader run is still my favorite. But I think that's always kind of been my favorite too, of just the whole shebang. So, yeah, I'm gonna say the Vader run's my favorite. Just
and did you get a sense that things were really tied together?
For the most part, I felt like the Star Wars mainline run kind of was just doing its own thing for the most part. I think the Vader run may have gotten a little closer to Crimson Dawn stuff. I didn't read enough of the Bounty Hunter to know. And Aphra still kind of remained kind of independent despite doing weird. So I think they found a good balance at least.
The biggest connection that Aphra has to Qi'ra is that in one panel she looks at Qi'ra and thinks she's hot. That's it.
That's true. And obviously, that the mainline Star Wars comic had the Death Star 2 arc.
Yeah, so there's all that stuff in it. I mean, the big challenge was to make these things connect, but also make them independent enough. I mean, that's again the challenge of any crossover. It's a challenge of High Republic, right? It's have all these things stand on their own in their own way, but make sense within everything that's happening too. So when I think about Aphra, I mean, it really stands out as this parallel thing that's happening that Qi'ra really wants to use. I mean, everything with the Ascendant. I mean, everything with Savile Watch, Madeline Sun, Kofan Ferris, everything they're up to again with the Ascendant being this Ascendant expert, literally expert. Getting their doctorate in the Ascendant. This was the moment where Aphra really rose to the top for me. In part, I think because the Vader run, my feeling about the Vader run, ultimately it started to really get wishy-washy in terms of Sabe's loyalties, but that's a little later on. I will say, I mean, the thing about, again, the organizing premise of the auction, you have this on the Vermilion, you have this location that everything revolves around. Really interesting moment I want to point out where I think it's Boba Fett, and in the flagship run, Boba Fett is there with Aphra and Sana, and there's the exact same moment in both that and the Aphra comic, and they have that's the thing you can do with a crossover, and they did well. It was a little kind of like, whoa, what's happening here? But I appreciated that.
It's interesting. I don't want to derail this too much. It's not in the notes, but it just kind of came across as right now. It's sort of like it's kind of interesting, kind of looking at like Mandoverse and kind of looking at the comics. It's like they're kind of doing the same thing where it's like it is all connected, but I do think every show is kind of its own thing. Like we got this Crimson Saga, but I still felt like for the most part the mainline Star Wars run was doing its own thing. The Vader comic was kind of doing its own thing, and Aphra was kind of doing its own thing until obviously you had the big specials, which we are going to get Mando, and we're going to obviously we got into Empire. So I just thought that was interesting. That's just sort of my here's how paper and screen are kind of connecting to each other right now. So
what makes it easier for the comics is it's all happening at the same time, at the same place. And I mean. It's cheaper too. That's true. You don't have to pay. Although it would be cheaper. You can. I mean, we have Coruscant, right? Having in multiple stories, you can build the same set and just have the Rebellion set and just have everyone have to schedule shooting. You don't have to schedule shooting on a comic, but anyway, so yeah, that's kind of our thoughts. I mean, War of the Bounty Hunters really just kicking everything off, setting everything up. Doc, I'll let you have the last word here on just War of the Bounty Hunters as a whole, how well it introduced everything going on.
Yeah, it got the ball rolling, and I know it does feel a bit disconnected from the rest of the trilogy because it is mostly a Boba Fett story, where the Crimson Reign and Hidden Empire are purely Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn. But I think that's kind of the point. Like, I feel like War of the Bounty Hunters was there to, like, especially Boba Fett coming out that year, like, they wanted to, like, capitalize on this is about Boba getting Han back, and, like, yeah, having that reveal of Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn being behind everything, I thought was really effective, and did a really good job of getting people invested in what was going to happen next with that. Because, like, Crimson Dawn is still a big part of Star Wars, and if we see them again after this whole saga, if we don't, I think there's a good way for them to go out. At the same time, they did kind of leave the door open, and we don't know exactly what happened to all of them. So, like, there's still potential for the future in terms of that. So, yeah, just a good, fun crossover event to get things rolling with this whole saga here, and very, very, very fun.
Definitely successful way to kick it off. We move on to Crimson Reign and the plot coagulating. And first off, this is one where the flagship itself is really interesting, going to multiple angles and origins, building pathos for all of these different characters. First of all, the orphans, Qi'ra and Soule's narrative bait and switch, number one, where we think she's trying to ally with everybody and then stabs everyone in the back. It was like, I felt the bait and switch. I don't know if other people did. The very bait and switch that she's playing on the Empire and on all these other underworlds just destabilizes everything. The assassins, here's Ochi's time in the sun, also with Death Stick, giving her more time. Just really, I think she was connected to Unbroken Clan, or she's going after Unbroken Clan. The point. One of my favorites, the Archivist. Joel, we did a whole episode on number 3.
Yeah.
Just in terms of how she delves into Madeline Sun, delves into the history of the Jedi and why the Jedi fell, and the arrogance of the Jedi and how the galaxy turned against them, and of course that's when she's supposedly going to try and retrieve Yoda for Crimson Dawn. She doesn't try because it's Yoda. There's that. The Knights infiltrating Vader's castle. That was the Knights of Ren, getting that key, and then finally the Scarlet Queen showing her cards, wanting to defeat the Sith and level the galaxy, equalize the galaxy. She has this moral impetus here, but by any means necessary. Doc, so that's the flagship, and then we'll go into the other books later. But just the flagship itself, just Qi'ra's own motivations. You've touched on it a little bit before, but already. But yeah, what do you think of her yearning for revenge at any cost, and the way she goes about it in this flagship, the Crimson Reign flagship run?
Very, very interesting miniseries. Much more character focused this time. Very much showing the different sides of Crimson Dawn, different factions within it, the different people and their motivations for why they're doing this. And with Qi'ra, we know her motivation. She's doing this because she wants a more even playing field in the galaxy for anyone to rule if they want, which is a really interesting motivation. With Ochi, he's essentially going where he benefits from the most. Like he's very wishy-washy with whoever he works for. So he doesn't mind going behind Palpatine's back to take out some of his guards if it means like he gets in good with Crimson Dawn, if that's where he has the best luck to be. And with Death Stick, she had her whole freaking Night Sister clan wiped out on Palpatine's orders. So that's a big motivation there. And with the Knights of Ren, like they're trying to make their way in the galaxy, trying to make a name for themselves, but they've got Vader and Palpatine on top, like making it harder for them. And with the Archivist, Palpatine took away her biggest passion in life, which was studying the Force. Palpatine made it illegal for her to do that, and so she wants to get that life back. And of course, hence why Crimson Reign #3 is probably my favorite issue. Like, she learns from Yoda's lesson that, like, revenge isn't the way. Like, she's not going to succeed. Like, and if she brought Yoda into their thing, then Yoda would probably be killed and the galaxy would be screwed. So yeah, she learns ultimately to make that choice and to not pursue revenge in exchange for allowing the galaxy to take on a better path. And she decides to go against the path of revenge. And like, I think that's ultimately why Archivist ends up better than Qi'ra, because she chooses not to pursue revenge, and she ends up having a better life because of it.
It's almost foreshadowing, just now that we know how it ends. Here's halfway through, right? It's the middle issue, the middle crossover, saying, yeah, this is not, I mean, we had the very beginning saying this is the beginning of the end. We knew already, of course, since 1983, that this wouldn't be successful, but from their point of view, why they wouldn't ultimately be able to use the Fermata cage and complete their plan. Obviously, there's more to that than this, but the Archivist doing what theologians do, contemplating and trying to ask the big questions. That made me happy too. It was a full-on actual Force theologian there. Joel, you got some notes in here. What do you think of specifically about Qi'ra's motivation? Doc, how you mentioned wanting to make a level playing field so anybody can rule. Almost a will to power a little bit, but not quite. Joel, what did you think of Qi'ra's yearning for revenge at any cost?
Yeah, I mean, she learned from Maul. She learned from the master of revenge at any cost. That's actually something I've kind of been curious about now. More just this comic. It's like, did Qi'ra betray Maul? I mean, they didn't really say give a definitive answer, and there's always some wiggle room to kind of say yes or no. But it's like, it never comes off that way. She seems to have reverence for him. So it makes you kind of wonder, like, if our whole "did Qi'ra betray Maul and leave on Malachor" thing happen, or did just Maul go onto Malachor and then he accidentally hit a rock and well, Maul's stuck here. Shoot, he's clumsy.
His ship got stuck up top and he fell in the.
Yes, I mean it's Maul. He just kind of accidentally fumbles his way.
That's possible.
But yeah, I think it was an interesting for sure, and kind of looking at all these different dark side morally ambiguous, not clean hat, white shirt, clean hat characters who are against the Empire still. It's like, kind of sort of that kind of cliche of like, well, Qi'ra's not that bad when you compare it to like the Emperor. Who's definitely made a system where he is at the tippy top of everything. And obviously, it doesn't work out. And I think it's kind of, obviously, we knew that already. Sometimes the story must adhere to that regardless. Like, you kind of wonder if like, well, if they didn't have a planned ending, they could always say that it could have worked. It could have worked. It's just, the story of Star Wars demands that the Emperor lives. Right. There's no alternate timelines here. But it is kind of it's interesting, kind of looking at like this kind of counter dark side, almost rebellion against the Emperor. But this form of the but it's also kind of interesting looking at it from just in terms of the Sith and what Palpatine represented as like, this is the dark side where it's very controlled, very machine. It's the Cyril Karns in their little cubicles, and here you have all these other dark side characters who are very chaotic. Who are almost like free spirits, like the Knights of Ren are like they're like bandits. Like, we go where the Force goes, man. Follow the dark side. Peace. Woo! woo.
They are rock stars. It's true.
Yeah, like we don't hear to your rules, man. And even though they then serve the emperor later. But it's sort of kind of interesting, like these almost like one. I don't want to say these are like two forces of the dark side fighting each other, because I don't think it's necessarily that, but it's sort of like you have the emperor's fascistic, very totalitarian regime, and then Qi'ra's philosophy is almost. It's not true anarchy, because that's not what anarchy is actually about. There's a whole philosophy about it, but certainly like kind of ride or die chaos nihilism almost. Where like there are no rules, man. It's every person for themselves, but we all got a chance to be on top. And I just think that's an interesting look at kind of this battle that's going on.
Ride the storm. Nile, a little bit there, a little bit, but I mean, probably even more morally understandable. I mean, the interesting thing you have here, from the light and the dark united against the enemy, and we'll get into that a little bit, just because one of them actually does end up working. She tries all these different things. One of them ends up working. Let's look at what all these different things are in the different comic runs. So Vader, he's with Ochi and those revenge fighters on this planet, and he grabs them in to hunt down Crimson Dawn operatives and spies in the Empire. Of course, Ochi turns out to be, as you said, pretty wishy-washy. And then the return of Sabe as a Crimson Dawn ally. Of course, Sabe, Doc, as you mentioned, everything in the Vader run is about this confrontation with Luke on the second Death Star. And the return of Anakin. So Sabe, of course, representing Padme in very deep ways. Aphra, she's going on with Domina Tag's machinations there, or we see Domina Tag come back in full force. But Chelly's still grappling with Ascendant Tech and trying to see, I don't know, kind of explore it, see how it could profit her. Different, just trying to understand it, I guess. And there, bounty hunters. So the thing with bounty hunters, after Qi'ra's bait and switch, the Underworld is now really divided between those who are with Qi'ra and those who are trying to get their own jobs and whatnot. The Edgehawk crew really coming together, and of course Valance is full on enslaved to Vader at this point, partly because he thinks Vader has his family in a crosshair, or his loved ones in a crosshair. And then the big thing, the ongoing comic, Luke seeking answers from the past, including Elzar Mann, Qi'ra pointing the rebels in the right direction to the fleet, and that of course culminates Leia, Commander Zara, which is Tarkin's protege, really fascinating villain. The whole Leia Qi'ra meetup that we finally longing for since Solo, and this ongoing run, it really pushes more momentum towards Return of the Jedi and the fleet massing their Solus. I mean, both Vader and ongoing really serve to again point towards, and as they had to in this year, it had to be the two books that had to point, because of course dealing with the main characters of Return of the Jedi. To the films, the ongoing really focusing on the fleet massing their Solus, and then Endor. Also, Poe's parents are the best. Just put that out there. So again, similar question as before, Doc. How did you feel Crimson Reign as a crossover event with all these different storylines? How that held together while the story is trying to preserve their independence. And kind of standing alone in their integrity, and of these, which storyline stood out to you the most?
I think the Leia Qi'ra meetup was really well done. I liked how that kind of reinforces to each character like how they see Han. Like Qi'ra sees Han as like her potential like way out of this lifestyle that she's fallen into. Like she sees Han as she says, the good guy. Like she sees him as like the kind of life she could have had if she hadn't joined Crimson Dawn. But she doesn't seem like she has a choice at this point. Like she feels like she's dedicated herself to this mission of getting revenge on Maul's behalf and her behalf. So she feels like she sees Han as like, he's lucky that he didn't end up like me, that he didn't end up like this. And like Leia doesn't trust Qi'ra, but she sees that Qi'ra does generally care about Han, and that she did like regard him as like a good person, like a good guy, and like that. And that even though like Qi'ra, and as Leia says at the end of Hidden Empire, like even though Qi'ra, went about this the wrong way, it would have been good if Leia regrets like that they weren't able to help her in some way, that they weren't able to show her a better path and like prevent this whole thing from happening. But on the other hand, like we said before, like if it wasn't for Qi'ra trying to get revenge and failing, then the rebellion might not have won in the end. And so it's a really interesting like whole scenario that's laid out here, where like Qi'ra did the wrong thing, but also like she ended up inadvertently causing something good in the process.
I've always found Qi'ra interesting in this regard, especially considering she kind of Maul's apprentice, where it's like, Maul always wanted a brother. Maul always wanted, Maul tried to get Ezra to his side, and that failed. You got the Emperor who's always tempting everybody with like the dark side. That's the Emperor's thing. That's what he does. And then you got Qi'ra, who almost, especially when it comes to Han, is like, no, don't follow me. Don't be by my side. I don't want you to be like me. I know that you have good in you, Han. Like it's almost like kind of a weird thing. It'd be like if Padme were evil, but still going, Anakin, there's good in you. Like, I don't know. That's kind of the closest thing I can think of. But it's not the best analogy, but sort of like, Qi'ra never wants Han to go with him or go with her. She never wants Han to join the Crimson Dawn. She's like, no, Han, you're a good guy. You are the good guy. Obviously, Han kind of slips by the time you get to the New Hope. That's kind of his arc, and then and by the end, obviously, Luke reawakens Luke and Leia reawaken what they've always saw in Han. It's like, yeah, you are the good guy, and obviously, Han's whole path leads him to ultimately Episode 7, where he makes the ultimate sacrifice himself to save his kid's soul, pretty much. I just think that's always kind of an interesting thing about Qi'ra, where it's like she never wants Han to join her. She never wants. She's not She's not trying to corrupt anybody per se. Maybe she corrupts a couple people, but it's like when it comes to Han, at least she's like, no, I don't really want Han corrupted. I don't think I could live in a world without corrupt Han. I think I know where Han's heart is. It's really nice where Snow goes, like, you have too much of your father's heart. So Qi'ra saw that, and I think it's interesting. Qi'ra never wants to corrupt that heart. I think she wants to kind of always keep it pure, and she knows that she's not good for Han, and she knows that kind of in a weird way.
I wonder if she sees him and this whole thing of this is interesting, getting him free and part of the rebellion, and him making good on him being the good guy as her hope of redemption, despite what she's in. Maybe she won't necessarily experience it. Kind of at the end, she's alone at the bar. She sees what happens, but it's this hope. At least I can still contribute to him being good, even if I'm not necessarily. It really makes good on that moment specifically, and everything she does for the rebels. Really makes good on the promise of bringing her back in, at least in terms of what she means for Han's story, because of course that's her origin. In Solo, what she means for Han's story, the beginning, and what she means for him at the end. Charles-Soule got a chance to explore that in both books, right? In both the flagship and the ongoing, what this means, and of course, it's funny. It means let Leia take him.
It's funny. It's kind of like, it's almost like the Luthen speech to Lonnie, where Luthen is like, I know my soul's already doomed to damnation, but you know, Lonnie, you're the hero. You're going to be the one they write the books about and get the fancy pages. And I feel like, you know, Luthor's like, you know, I'm doomed to never see the sunrise of the whatever hopeful era that's not the Empire. And I think it's kind of interesting, like maybe that's like a Luthor thing where it's like, you know, like, look, I know my soul is kind of damned forever, but Han's too good. If as long as like if I can save Han, that maybe like at least the future is brighter, even if I'm never going to be a part of it. That's an interesting read. I would certainly go after.
Yeah, definitely similar in that sense. I mean, the difference being Luthor needs this guy to keep going and sacrifice himself too. But yeah, for the sake of trading his soul for the sake of another. Very fascinating. Before we move on, Doc, you have any last thoughts on Crimson Rain crossover, etc.?
Just a cool, like, solid, like, very second act feeling story. Like, you know, like typically, like with the original trilogy, the first act is the fun adventure that gets things started. The second one is more emotional, more character focused, more personal, and the third one is the big bombastic climax. So this definitely followed that structure, and for that reason, like, I've ended up saying that Crimson Rain might be my favorite of the three series, just because of how character focused and how like character driven it was, and like how it went deep into all the characters and set up why they're so important to the plot that Qi'ra's cooked up, which sets the stage perfectly for when they all finally lose and abandon her when Hidden Empire goes awry.
I mean, it like I said, it is really the payoff, even though Hidden Empire is it's the climax, but it's kind of the continuing or the falling action a little bit in a way. Because I have most interesting. So go ahead, Joel.
I got one critique. We never found out who that director dude was in the final issue. They covered his face.
I wonder if they're saving that for like
in Crimson Rain.
Yeah, there's the final issue. There's like
the shadow.
Director Bashar or something like that.
Barsha is his name.
Barsha.
His face is completely covered. He's the guy who informs Palpatine at the end that Crimson Dawn was the one who set up the whole Syndicate War. We never found out who he was.
Maybe he's Ajax Sigma. No, I don't know.
Honestly, they might be saving the reveal for that crossover that's coming.
Yeah,
they might be saving it for that.
I'll be blunt. I completely forgot about that guy. So, okay, so Hidden Empire.
Still
go for it. So, what was that, Doc?
I still hope he's Pride.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's possible. Moving on finally to Hidden Empire. Definitely a smaller crossover. The Vader run clearly falls off the crossover story. The ongoing run, they're doing something else in this Nihil based sort of thing. They're off in the middle. Yeah,
I would say of all the series that tied in this, I'd say Afra the one that tied in strongly.
So here's where I'm going is it isn't really the only crossovers are Afra and Bounty Hunters left, and the rest, and it's a smaller crossover. So I'll go through the flagship. I'll go through what happens here. So we do have Qi'ra's Hidden Fleet, and this is the flagship run. You have Madeline. You have Qi'ra's Hidden Fleet under the waterfall. Madeline's son, Kofan Ferris, and the Fermata Cage. I should mention, I didn't really mention, we got Cadelia, and with Qi'ra and Cadelia, basically her taking Cadelia under her wing. That will, of course, tie into Bounty Hunters a bit later. So Madeline's son, Kofan Ferris, and the Fermata Cage. That, of course, tie into Afra. Showdown, we get the Amexine Station. We're finally come back to that. I'll talk about what I thought about that and the ending in a minute. And then we finally get this reveal: Luke, Leia, and the Jedi training. They're the hooded figures at the end, looking back on and hearing the archivists recording at the end, trying to as part of Luke and Leia's Jedi training, and or Leia's training. Leia's learning the ways of the Force. Luke discovering different things. I'm not too sure. I wonder if they're going to pay off on that a little bit later. So with Aphra, again, another wild storyline. She's trapped within, but then collaborating with the Spark Eternal, meets Mural, has this whole dialogue with this ancient Chadrafan memory trapped in the Spark here, or inhabiting the Spark. It's another vendetta against the Sith. Mural has this ancient revenge. We get the image of the actual Sith species for the first time. Really beautiful, heartfelt issue there. Sana. So here's where the Formatic Cage comes in, where Sana and Tolvan, and then the plot to try and free Aphra using the Formatic Cage, and of course the tag feud then culminates. At the end, we have the Knights of Ren. They turn on Qi'ra. They end up supporting Palpatine, saying, "Hey, look at us. We helped you out here." It didn't go as well for them as they thought. Vader in Doctor Strange astral projects Qi'ra, instead of needing the Formatic Cage, and that's back in the flagship. But then I just read this last night. Finally, the epilogue number 30, Dr. F number 30, which I actually thought is one of the best Star Wars comics I've read in a while. Such a satisfying payoff. What was set up, the Aphra is finally freed by Sana, stabbing her in the chest, surrounded by Tolvan, her father, and everyone who actually loves her. Lastly, we got Bounty Hunters. Valance finally freeing himself, meeting up with Tongar. They're still on the hunt for Cordelia, not knowing necessarily that everything with that she's in with Qi'ra, and of course Vukora and with the Unbroken Clan. I guess they still want Cordelia. So some things aren't left finished. The main things that are left finished are the Formatic Cage and the Crimson Dawn plot to take out the Sith. The Empire, of course, they're ascendant. They got the Death Star underway. They've all the pieces. The only pieces that are left are what we see in Return of the Jedi, the Empire and the Rebellion. And maybe that's why all these characters are just not on the table. Maybe that's in a way what Charles-Soule had to do and had to set out to do. And of course, Alyssa Wong and Greg Pak and them set out to do is say these are the only pieces left on the table. Everyone in with Aphra and Bounty Hunters are still around. Of course, the Inferno Squad coming up the rear, trying to take them out. So that's Hidden Empire again, a lot smaller, definitely not as much of a crossover. Didn't really use the banner this time. It wasn't, both War of the Bounty Hunters and Crimson Reign had those banners on top, had the special branding. Hidden Empire didn't really use that, except for with Aphra number 30 has this little thing of a Hidden Empire crossover. Doc, same question every time. How do you feel, again, a smaller crossover? How do you feel? Well, it's a bit of a different question. How do you feel about the ending to this story, especially with wondering about specifically what you thought about the Knights of Ren and their role in it, and then of course the ending in Aphra's role, relationship to the Formatic Cage and the Spark Eternal.
I think this was probably the most satisfying way the story could have ended. Like it really ties in well. Everything coalesces. Like I know I had that insane theory that like the ghost in the cage was going to turn out to be Snoke, but like of course there wasn't a ghost, which honestly, like I know Joel was talking about like I hope there is a ghost, like that wouldn't be satisfying, but honestly I'm satisfied with this. I'm okay with there not being a ghost. Like I'm okay with this being Qi'ra's way to lure Vader and Palpatine in for the final kill shot. Like this was, and the way this is kind of playing off of kind of manipulating their like Sith like lineage. Like, oh, there's a Sith coming. Well, there can only be two Siths, so we gotta stop this Force ghost from coming. And they get there, but there's no ghost to bust, and so they almost get stuck in the cage themselves. But yeah, and then the Knights of Ren realizing like, oh crap, they're not going to stay in there forever, and then they're going to come after us, so we better get in their good graces, and they help them escape. So yeah, like it's a really cool way to wrap this whole thing up. I think it's very fitting that the Knights of Ren are the ones to ultimately end Crimson Dawn's whole plan. And in a way, it's kind of symbolic of like, okay, like Crimson Dawn's time is over, and now here come the Knights of Red. They're the new bad boys on the block, and like they're gonna get their ass kicked later, but like they're the new main villains of like this whole Star Wars universe going forward. So like, yeah, I think that was a really cool way to tie everything up. Again, I love how like we see all the allies that Qi'ra built up throughout Crimson Reign all slowly abandon her one after the other for each issue. First, the Knights of Ren leave, then Ko leaves, then Chanif and her team leave, and then like she just loses everyone she's built up, and like they all abandon her, and they all have to scatter in the end. And like, yeah, it feels really like the ultimate like statements on like Maul's whole philosophy of like. Revenge doesn't get you anything in the end. Like you shouldn't do things out of a need to feel like satisfaction. You should do things because they're the right thing to do. You shouldn't do it to satisfy yourself. You shouldn't do it to make yourself feel like you've won, because the need to feel superior will ultimately lead you to lose everything in the end. And that's exactly what happened with Maul, and it happened again with Qi'ra.
Yeah, it's a really melancholy moment, and she's sitting at the bar. It's bittersweet. I mean, it's sweet in that she sees, oh yeah, I had this part to play in the rebels' victory,
but I lost.
But she lost herself, and she's alone, sitting at the bar, anonymous. You know, everything she had hoped to build, it's really been taken from her. Yeah, it's this melancholy, bittersweet moment. Joel, what do you think of the way this storyline ended? And specifically, what I'm wondering, and Doc, it's interesting you mentioned that the Knights of Ren was satisfying. I thought it was very fast. I'll say this.
Yeah, it was.
I wanted a little bit more time, maybe even a whole issue, kind of building up why they lead to this. I guess we kind of had it with them. Well, no, I mean they succeed at Vader's castle.
I think the reason it worked for me personally is because the Knights of Ren are very simple characters. Like they're very like we're out for ourselves. We want money. We want power. Like, oh, there's power. Let's go get it. Like, I don't think you really need like a cool in-depth character study of Ren. Like, he's a really simple like dude, bro.
Yeah, kind of like Oshi, kind of going back.
Yeah.
Anyway, Joel, what do you think of the way this story ended, and were you satisfied with it?
I thought overall, maybe I was a little disappointed about the Fermata cage. Maybe I felt a little too built up for my liking. Especially with like no ghost or like no something, just kind of like and now it's done. I'm shocked but happy that Qi'ra lives. I was never quite 100% on like, are they gonna kill her? Is this her end? Is this like, is Charles-Soule allowed to? Is this allowed? And we could get to the whole thing of like multimedia in another episode, but sort of like, it's like, oh well, she could technically, she now could technically appear in the post-Endor era somewhere, be it Mandalorian verse or something else. Boba 2, I would hope so, maybe, or somewhere else. I don't know.
In a way, sorry, it kind of feels like
go ahead.
This. In a way, I almost feel like this fate for Qi'ra almost seems kind of worse than death, because like it'd be one thing if she went on a blaze of glory. She almost killed Palpatine, then she got killed by him. But no, she just loses everything, and now she's just a nobody, just living by herself in the galaxy. That's kind of worse than like dying in a blaze of glory. You just kind of go back to living a normal life.
It's sort of interesting, like, compared to like also like Maul as well. I feel like almost Maul got more peace in his life because like, well, he died in his only kind of his twisted best friend enemy.
Best enemy.
Yeah, that was his last line. He will avenge us, and ultimately he does get avenged when Luke saves them. In a way, like Qi'ra gets that as well. The rebellion does ultimately win the end. So ultimately, Luke kind of avenged both Maul and Qi'ra in a way.
I do agree that it's sort of like, but it's also kind of cool because it's sort of like Well, now Qi'ra has to live with it. And,
Yeah.
I think, some characters who kind of get the quick redeem should die, like Vader. I don't think Vader was going to have a peaceful life. I thought Ben Solo could have had this kind of an ending myself personally, but oh well, what you do. I'm glad Reva gets to kind of have her kind of atonement moment.
Yeah, both Vader and Kylo kind of like, they were kind of like spared of like the fate of like having to like atone for what they did, which
well, and also Vader was so messed up physically. It's like
True.
He kind of dead inside, and both physically and stuff like that. It's like I don't want to sound disparaging to like disabled people, obviously, but it's sort of like the dude's like totally just scarred up. It's like he's
more machine now than man.
Exactly, like he gets kind of the piece. Yeah. And Ben Solo probably could have lived. I'm kind of hoping Crosshair also can get a living moment as well. Yeah. But I think when you say that, it's like it is kind of cool that Qi'ra gets to live with her actions, even if we never see her. Because I feel like, well, at least the potential for stories is always there. So it's like maybe she could meet Han again when she's older and just kind of like, oh wow. It's like it's been a long time, so that's just kind of cool. It's like, yay, the possibility of Han and Qi'ra.
You guys have seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, right?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Like Qi'ra kind of ends up like Ozai. She's not dead, but she's depowered. She's like all by herself, like defeated. Like she's lost everything, but the door is still kind of open for her to come back if she wants to.
Yeah. So
maybe Azula more than
Azula,
because at least I feel like Ozai kind of more like if the Emperor.
I went with Ozai because Ozai like loses all of his powers in the end, like Qi'ra does.
That's true, but I think it's cool. I'm glad the story's open for that, and I think maybe we're training ourselves to like a character story ends when they die, and it's like, well, I think certain characters should die. It's like the Emperor. I think his story ends by him exploding. Twice.
Well, twice. Somehow he returned.
But then he exploded again. But I think someone like Qi'ra, probably this is like the best. The fate that it's a fate's worse than death, but also I think it's an interesting fate. It's almost than death.
That also leaves the door open.
Right. Well, so all this conversation immediately. I mean, this is where we've already gotten to this. What could come next? What happens next? We talk about this. We talk about Qi'ra. Sitting alone in a bar. What I was talking about before with her shot at redemption through Han. What if she's wrong? What if she realizes, oh, I'm still alive? Well, I have a shot at redemption through myself, which is the only way you can actually find it, right? Anakin, yes, he needs Luke to come back, but he comes back and he actually, I mean, I think he's still the chosen one who brings balance to the Force, but you can debate that. At the very least, he has his moment, right? Ben Solo has his moment for himself, even with Rey. Qi'ra needing all these circumstances to go south. Again, she's alone in the bar. What if she actually finds her way back and finds her way back to a place of redemption? Again, there's a great parallel. Here's Aphra. Aphra at the end of this issue, number 30. She's finally crying for the first time, and she opens her eyes. Well, what's happened? What are these wet things in my face? Surrounded by the people who love her. And what if she finds that? What if Qi'ra finds that? What if she finds that with Cordelia? What if she finds that with inspiring the future leadership? Clearly she was probably steering Cordelia in a certain direction, but maybe kind of reverse course. Like you say, the storytelling is open, both and Joel, in the notes you put here, during into Return of the Jedi, maybe even the Ajax Sigma thing. Who knows? But also after Return of the Jedi and what could come next in all that open storytelling room. Of course, we have the Mandoverse coming up later and the Aftermath trilogy. But I mean, here's a way of putting it. Doc, I'll ask you, what do you hope happens with Qi'ra now?
Honestly, I think the best way to go with her character from this point is to give her the opportunity to change that Maul never got. Like, Maul's like story was that he couldn't learn and he couldn't change and he couldn't grow, and that's why he ultimately lost. I want Qi'ra to be able to grow. I want her to be able to change. I want her to be able to move on from Maul. I want her to be able to move on from this whole thing she tried. I want her to be able to move on from the person she was before and find a better way of living. I think that's ultimately the best way you could like end her story, is like she learns that she wasted her whole life with Crimson Dawn, but now she has the opportunity to start over and like find a cause that's worth fighting for.
I agree with all that, and I will add, I think Leia would be an interesting person to do that, to help her.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, Qi'ra is like the dark side of Leia. She has all the good qualities she has all the kind of, she's able to lead people. She built this mini rebellion underworld, but it's like with all the kind of the wrong intentions and without kind of the more backstabby stuff going on. And obviously, Leia, she's got the leadership qualities too. She is a leader. She was a leader of the Rebel Alliance. She's a leader of the Resistance. She built this army by herself. But obviously Leia has a lot more of the right kind of moral thinking. So I think it'd be interesting to just like, if Leia herself gave Qi'ra an open hand, and Leia herself was like, oh, I wish we could have done something for her, kind of help. So I would love to see Leia kind of hold out that hand of, hey, maybe we could help you. We could offer you that kind of that connection you want. And obviously, sure, she has her connection to Han, so
yeah, there's that. I mean, as long as Qi'ra isn't too jealous, can let that go. What was I say? Yeah, it would be fascinating, that again the connection to I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, definitely hope something along those lines. Similar question then, Joel, you point out Crimson Dawn is still around potentially. There, at least in Qi'ra, still alive. She probably has some knowledge, some assets lying around she can go to. Clearly she's able to afford a drink at a bar. What role do you think Crimson Dawn might have? Oh, I think I remember what I was going to say. I'll back up. I was going to say it isn't just with Maul, right? It's with, again, Paul Bettany's character. I'm never going to remember that guy's name.
Voss.
Dryden Voss. And Lady Proxima and all her origins. She was set up to be this way. She was set up. Han was too, but Han was able to transcend it thanks to Leia, thanks to Rebellion. Qi'ra maybe sees not just in Han her opportunity for redemption vicariously, but also Han was able to transcend it. Lando's able to transcend it. What if she can actually also transcend the lack of privilege, what's the word? Disenfranchisement. I don't think that's the word, but up for upbringing that pushed her in a certain direction on Corellia. Yeah, I do hope that's a compelling story too. I don't know if we'll see it. Anyway, also then a similar question. Crimson Dawn, really fascinating organization as a whole. Her Qi'ra's right-hand person, I forget her name, throughout this, all her aides, all the way she's able to build these connections.
Margot.
Yeah, Margot. All these build up this empire again. Cadelia's still around, right? We'll have to see what happens with her, because clearly Valance is still on the hunt for her. What could Crimson Dawn? How might Crimson Dawn be evolved through Return of the Jedi into the aftermath and maybe into Time of the Mandoverse? Doc, do you have any speculation, any thoughts on where they might fit?
Again, like I said before, I want Qi'ra to be able to find herself and find a better path than what she had before. In terms of Crimson Dawn, though, I could see them coming back. I could see them like reemerging once the Empire, especially once the Empire is gone, because that power vacuum. So like, and they're scattered in the end, so they could recoalesce. They could get themselves back on the ground again without Qi'ra. They could, if it's Cadelia who leads them, that could be interesting. If it's someone else who leads them, either way, I can't see Crimson Dawn being taken fully off the map at this point. I think we're going to see them again in something at some point, be it in comics or novels or possibly on-screen things. Like, yeah, I could see Crimson Dawn's
Skeleton Crew
future ahead.
There's my cold take. Skeleton Crew, Cadelia. Not gonna happen, but my cold take. Anyway, Joel, what do you think about Crimson Dawn? How they might show up, or what they might get up to? Yeah, like you said, during the vacuum of the Empire falling.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt they'll take Crimson Dawn off the board. It's too much of the Huts are still around. Too iconic. I think it's more likely this is something the comics could deal with if we are about to, depending on whenever we decide to move forward in the timeline. I mean, I could see Crimson Dawn maybe getting a mention in the shows moving forward. I don't think they're going to play a big part in anything necessarily. But I definitely think I think the comics are definitely the place to keep going with the story arc. But yeah, I don't think they're going to get rid of Crimson Dawn too easily.
What kind of role do you see them possibly playing in that vacuum?
Maybe Chaos Agents. Kind of like, Jabba's dead. Black Sun's still kind of doing a thing. Pikes definitely seem to be expanding a little bit. But it's like, well, there's a lot of power vacuums right now. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Qi'ra, she's responsible for the power vacuum in a lot of ways. I mean, she took all these other groups at least down a peg, if not off the map. So yeah, I mean, that's maybe why in the aftermath, I mean, one of the threads is maybe not a thread. It's glaring by omission that at least all the pirate gangs, all the pirate kingdoms are these newer groups, these newer ships flying around. It isn't the old groups as much. Of course, the big thing is the Huts are in shambles after Jabba's death, but thanks to Leia. So yeah, that's definitely possibilities. It's possibilities. I wonder if there's maybe a similar thing with Qi'ra being redeemed. Can they be a little bit more legit? I don't know. Would they be themselves if that were the case? I don't know. Lando turns legit in his operations on Bespin, etc. So you never know. Is that so? Joel and then Doc. I'll ask you one final question. Do you guys have any overall thoughts, feels, things that you're just satisfied with this whole Crimson Saga?
I'll go first.
And last thoughts. Yeah, Joel, and then I'll give Doc the last word there.
Yeah. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. I really thought it was interesting. I kind of wish we weren't going into another crossover or big thing with the droid stuff. Sure. As cool as that sounds, I kind of feel like we need to just finally just move away from the Return of the Jedi post Empire, pre-Return of the Jedi era. We could and just move forward because I feel like this would have been the place to finally and now we move on. It's that's a good note. But oh no, there's more. Gotta cram in there.
Wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. And it's how many things happened before Vader and Luke on the Death Star? Yeesh, what a year. It's Palpatine must be just tired as heck.
Again, that's a joke.
But yeah, overall, it's a saga and a trilogy on its own. I thought it was really cool and a really cool thing to see Qi'ra. So yeah, very good.
Doc, final thoughts on the Crimson Saga as a whole?
Yeah, very good. Very, very solid story. I like what Charles-Soule did with Qi'ra and Crimson Dawn. A really cool way to tie that part of the prequel era into the original era. A very satisfying conclusion to that story. Even if we don't see Qi'ra, Crimson Dawn, or anything else, I think it's a good way for them to go out. And if we do see more of Qi'ra or Crimson Dawn down the line, I hope it's an equally good story. And I hope Qi'ra gets another shot, gets one last shot to be a better person and to maybe be a good lady, like Han is the good guy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I'm really glad it really rewarded the completist. That's another thing to say. Especially again the way Afra really rose to the top for me, at least. Even though it's connected, her story's connected, but not quite. And then leaves things open for the future. So I'm glad Marvel gave everybody the green light. Joel, I agree with you. I wish we could kind of just make a beeline for Return of the Jedi. Mark Guggenheim, he had this great idea. I think it's Mark Guggenheim's idea to have this. I think maybe they'll earn it. Maybe the whole Age X Sigma thing will earn its place, probably in terms of what happens at the end of Crimson Saga, and the thing that finally pushes things into Return of the Jedi. I mean, we know the ongoing comic and the Vader comic will still have a lot of that. We know coming up, Luke and Aphra are going to team up again. That'll be interesting. So yeah, I mean, definitely leaving these characters off and with more to do before the confrontation on the Death Star. So yeah, Star Wars comics in a great place. Best place they've been in, I'd say, since the canon takeover. So there we go. That's kind of what they wanted. I gather the sales. I'm really curious to see. I mean, that's the thing. That's why Marvel does these events, right? To drum up attention and whatnot. But specifically with Star Wars, because it's rare, they hopefully got the sales numbers up. I'll check Kevin Dean Anderson's website for that. But for now, I think that's good discussion. Joel, why don't you take us home?
Yes, I will take us home just a second. All right. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Although I don't know why I read that. Thank you all for joining us, everybody. Let us know in the comments what you thought. Also, a shout out to former guests from last week, Omar, who I just saw on his Twitter, just found out what happened to Qi'ra in the comics. I hope it's because he was watching our show. You better be watching us, Omar. You better be watching this. This is the reason why you found out.
Or hopefully he's reading, and
that too. Yeah. Comment. But yes, as always, you can follow us at the Eye On Canon Pod. Again, at the Eye On Canon Pod, for all Twitter funness and retweets and threads of all sorts of things. Of course, you can follow me at JID2021. Again, JID2021. You can also follow me on the Star Wars Underworld Discord. Link in the below. This Friday, we will be hosting a Fall Guys game night of 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Doc, where can they follow you?
So I have a Tumblr, I have a Twitch, and I have a TikTok. And they're all under the name Dr. Holocron. So you can find me there, and of course my YouTube channel, where we do discussions, reviews of different Star Wars things. And like I said earlier, our review of Chapter 22 of The Mandalorian is up right now, and I'll be uploading our review of Chapter 23 tomorrow, right before the season finale. So make sure you check those out if you have a spare 3 hours, because that's how long we spent talking about. We're probably going to spend talking about the finale. So yeah, make sure you check that out. And however this season of Mandalorian ends, I hope it ends with the big reveal that we've all been wanting and waiting for, which is the one and only Ochia Festoon.
Of course. It is the only thing that will make it a 10 out of 10. Clearly, truly, and literally. But Matthew, where can they follow you?
It's all 10 out of 10, guys. This is one of the best Star Wars that's ever been on screen. And I don't say that lightly, because it's Mandalorian. It's not Space Wizards and Senators. So what am I talking about here? But no, I'm loving it. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at NEUG45, Instagram at MNEUG1138. Yeah, different things: soccer, Star Wars, Star Trek, all these things. I gotta say, also, here on YouTube, please do give this, and Facebook and Twitter, wherever you're seeing this, and Twitch, please do give this video a like and a share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There you go.
Oh.
Go for it.
What happened?
Oh, nothing. Good. We're good. Go for it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes, follow us on Twitter, all that stuff. Until next time, guys, blow this thing and go home. Awake the dawn.